Welcome back! In the previous video we introduced the basic bond features that you can see written down over here, and we elaborated on the first one, namely the bond issuer, and that's why I distinguish it with a different color. Let's continue with the second one, the maturity date. The maturity date is the date that the final bond payment is scheduled to take place. And in the very first video on fixed income, we said that the final payment typically comprises of the last interest payment or coupon payment plus the bond's par value. As we'll see later on in the material, this doesn't always hold. Now to give you a bit more context on maturity, bonds have varying maturities that typically range from 1 day to 30 years. But in reality, this is up to the issuer. And we do have bonds in the market with original maturities that exceed 30 years. To hit the point home and make you realize that maturities can indeed be greater than 30 years, I'll give you the example of perpetual bonds that just go on forever. And we'll see how we value these bonds in due time. Such bonds were issued in the past by the British government. Specifically, they were called consols. Moving on, in finance, we classify securities based on their original maturities as either money market securities, also known as money market instruments, or capital market securities. Bonds with original maturities of up to and including 1 year are classified as money market securities. Notice the lower than or equal sign over here. And bonds with original maturities of more than 1 year are classified as capital market securities. Now an example for each one of these. A treasury bill is a money market security. Treasury bills, or simply T-bills, are US government bonds that mature in a year or less and thus fall within the money market security definition. 20-year Greek government bonds fall within the capital market security spectrum for obvious reasons. Also, the perpetual bonds we mentioned in the previous slide are capital market securities since they never mature. Before moving on, I'd like to clarify that in order for a security to be classified as a money market or capital market security, it doesn't necessarily need to be a fixed income one. The classification holds true for other types of securities as well. Let's now move on to our final slide. Over here, I want to distinguish between the maturity date and the tenor or term to maturity of a bond. Two terms that are often incorrectly interpreted as the same thing. In reality, the tenor is the remaining time to the maturity date that we previously defined as the final payment date. So if we have a bond that promises to make the payments you see on the timeline, that is pay $7 in year 1, 7 in year 2, and 107 in year 3, then this is a bond with an original maturity of 3 years. And to connect it with what we said a few moments ago, this is a capital market instrument. Now if I'm standing at year 1, then the bond's maturity date is still year 3. But the tenor or term to maturity, which is the time remaining to the maturity date, is 3 minus 1, which equals 2 years. Let's continue the discussion in the next video.